Hello and welcome to the Total Clarity Podcast. I'm Mike Varley.
I'm Jessie Hyatt.
And we have yet another way to do this podcast. I'm not sure we've done the same version of the podcast twice. This time we are doing a walking version where I'm going to be holding the camera the whole time and we're going to be talking to this man on our right. He is the lead producer at Avalanche Studios New York. He is a native New Yorker of this area, the Central Park region of our walk, and he is a fantastic dresser, Mr. Chris Supino.
Hello everyone, welcome.
And we are here at the Central Park Zoo for the start of our walk. Let me see if I can get some quick seal action before
They were just barking.
Yeah, you can probably hear that. There they go. There go the seals. There's maybe a little bit more action for people watching on YouTube than listening on Podbean, but we'll try our best to be verbally descriptive as well. So thanks for joining us on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
I'm a big follower of your podcast.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
Wow.
I just watched the Tahir episode.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was kind of interesting just listening to your experience out in Breezy Point, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then just like learning about communities and kind of how they're different. It was weird. It was interesting that you got that far out to have the first experience be that like that.
Right.
Just because like growing up in New York, I think what I was saying to Varley earlier was like, when you're a kid, you're kind of treated like that all the time. Like you're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be there.
Right.
And it's a lot of adults being really nosy about why is this kid here.
And you just kind of listen and go along with it, or?
I mean, you get scared and you run away, basically.
Right.
But a lot of it had to do with when you're like a little kid, the truancy laws. So basically, anybody that was on the street that was of a certain height before 3 p.m., the cops would come up to you and they'd ask you, what are you doing here?
Oh,
So that was kind of like the experience. And then, as you become older, people stop asking you what you're doing places.
Right.
For the most part. But then there's neighborhoods like Breezy Point, there's Gramercy Park, there's, I feel like Breezy Point isn't quite like Gramercy Park in that there's a lot more gray area there as to whether you're supposed to be there or not.
Right. Gramercy Park is pretty clear.
Yeah.
There's a gate and a lock. And it's like, you don't come in here unless you have a key.
Do not come in here.
Here's your silver key.
It's also only such a small area that you're like, okay, no big deal. Whereas Breezy Point's like, well, I'm trying to go to the public land at the end.
Yeah.
And I don't have a car and I'm walking a marathon every day. So what else do you want me to do?
Yeah. And also just the safety guys bit was like, you're not doing your job. Your job is not to tell us to go into the street. It's to make sure we're safe.
Yeah.
But
do you know of any other neighborhoods?
I think any neighborhood that is a dead end, like a dead end street, even if it's public, like you're still gonna get people being like, what are you doing here?
Right.
Any neighborhood that, I personally feel any neighborhood that skews towards having like specific communities. So, you could have like more of a cop or fighter kind of community, maybe out in like deep Brooklyn somewhere where they know everybody's face, and if you walk in there they kind of raise some flags. But yeah, the Sutton Place, sometimes it happens like that. I think
I was wondering about Sutton Place too. I've actually only been down over there once, and we will walk through there at some point.
Yeah. Community gardens are also like, even though they're cool, like I think people feel there's actually one really interesting one on the Upper West Side that you need it's like a co-op almost.
Yeah.
You need to be part of it.
Okay.
To plant and stuff.
Okay.
But you don't need to be part of it to like be in there.
Okay.
But they kind of just forgot that part and they're like, what are you doing here? You don't have the It's like it's supposed to be like a public kind of thing.
There's a community garden near our house that is so pleasant, and I'll go in there and sit there sometimes.
Right.
But I always am like, is someone gonna kick me out? I really don't know. Like the gate's open, there's never anyone in there.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, am I trespassing? I don't know. I'm gonna stay because it's nice, but
That's kind of the vibe, I think.
So you
Yeah.
grew up on the Upper West Side,
Yes.
which falls within the boundaries of this week's walk.
Yeah.
For those listening, where our boundaries are 59th Street at the bottom and 110th Street up top, and then from shore to shore across.
Ooh,
So
very cool. You got some good stuff.
yeah, we did. We
Yeah.
managed to go on the Upper West Side quite a bit. Hit a lot of spots. I'm excited to talk to you about.
Yeah.
But what was it as far as the idea of like being an other in the neighborhood? You know, we're talking about places where there may actually be rules or not, and different types of stringency about that. I mean, did you feel growing up that there was a sense of like adults othering people in your neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, when I was growing up, there were really clear, like racial and almost like religious divides, at least in the Upper West Side.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Upper West Side is like a very historically kind of like Jewish community.
Okay.
So a lot of synagogues, a lot of the culture of the Upper West Side is, you know, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, you know, every Jewish holiday, and then you also have that kind of dealing with kind of, when I was growing up, a high crime rate in that neighborhood as well.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Tied to, you have basically kind of a weird system there on the Upper West Side, which is that there weren't that many great schools when I was growing up, and basically everyone was getting zoned into these kind of almost like cesspools in some way of like just bad, I don't know, bad vibes, I guess.
Okay.
And one of the key ones up there was this place called Brandeis, which was basically a really bad school, and I feel like a few famous politicians went there. They came out of it being like, hey, you know, I went to Brandeis. That was like their claim to fame. Like, I started at the bottom and blah, blah.
Okay.
Really bad school, known for school shootings, had metal detectors, all sorts of stuff like
Oh,
that.
wow.
And so, well, less shootings, but more like just violent crimes.
Okay.
And so when I was growing up, what would happen is you would get a lot of affluent, like almost like yuppies, right? Getting together and saying, hey, we want to change the schooling system for us because now we live here.
Right.
And what ended up happening is you got a lot of gifted and talented programs on the Upper West Side that were disproportionately white.
Right.
Considering the neighborhood that they were in.
Yeah.
So there was always tension there. Like, the good schools were full of white kids.
Right.
And the poor schools were full of people of color, kind of thing like that.
Right. And that had to do with more white people moving in.
It had to do with,
realizing
gentrification and basically, you know, that if you ever look at a map of like the gifted and talented programs of New York,
Yeah.
which is where you would want your kid to go to, because you get smaller class sizes, more, you know, specialized time, etc.
Of course, yeah.
If you ever look at a map of Bushwick and how big it is and how many gifted and talented programs are there, you
Yeah.
can start to see kind of what was happening on the Upper West Side, at least.
Like right now it's
Yeah,
starting
very
up again as
yeah.
like all the young people that
Yeah.
move there are starting to have kids.
Yeah,
and-
very
yeah.
similar. And but just going back to the point of like othering, it's like, it's more of like, you grow up kind of in this city and it's like a giant playground and it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of this point when you start to realize that it's kind of dangerous,
Right.
and it's got this kind of, you know, shady side to it. And then I think in response to that, you kind of start to form some defense mechanisms, some kind of aspects like that. So like, you know, hanging out with a rougher crowd or
Right.
doing whatever it takes that you think makes you less of a target or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
What age do you think you started to realize that you needed to like take care of yourself in that way?
Oh, in that way, like probably about, so I when I was growing up, like I would say like from the ages of like, you know, being born to like 8, life was all about Riverside Park, soccer on the weekends, and the Natural History Museum. Like
Cool.
that's all you did. You just like did those things.
Just so fun.
And my mom would like, you know, my mom would go to Natural History Museum. she could just spend hours there.
Yeah.
And so we would just run around and play tag, and that was like our life, right?
Yeah.
And I was a kid that didn't really go away to like summer camp. Like I didn't go away to sleepaway camp. I didn't, you know, and so that was just like how I was. That was part of my identity. And then I think you hit about like 12, so you're getting out of middle school, and drinking and, you know, drugs and whatever start entering the picture, and it becomes like a bit more about like, I don't want, it's either you're comfortable not being part of like a tough crowd,
Right.
and that's just your identity, and you kind of hope that's the outcome you shoot for.
Right.
That wasn't the outcome I shot for. I ended up actually just hanging out with like the crazier the people I could find, that's who I would hang out with.
Right.
And I would just keep jumping from crazier group to crazier group, crazier group. But generally, that's kind of how it goes, I think, in the city.
Yeah, that's sort of what I imagine, and I feel like what I've heard from some other people too.
That's right.
But that is nice to hear your personal experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a friend, Tom Wolfson, visit us on Wednesday. He also grew up on the Upper West Side.
Oh, shit.
On 106th.
Oh, great. Do you know what part of 106?
It was 106 between Amsterdam and Broadway as well, I believe.
Jeez, he might have lived in my friend's building.
He may have, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he, one of the things he was saying among the many was that he and his friends would hang out in Morningside Park because it was like historically the tougher one.
Yeah,
But
that was crazy.
This was like high school time, not like childhood.
Yeah, but this is like 10th to 12th grade.
Yeah, dude,
so.
Morningside Park was no joke.
Yeah.
You could, so Santeria is big in Morningside Park.
Yeah.
And you would see like, not saying that makes it any tougher, I'm just saying it adds a creepy
Adds a
element.
vibe, yeah.
Yeah, like I remember walking through there and seeing like floating calf skulls with like candles and stuff. You also see like loose chickens running around.
Oh my
It's kind of like a
gosh.
crazy
They
park.
got away.
Right.
Yeah, but no, I mean Morningside was where, at Morningside at night, you would, even now I probably wouldn't go
Yeah.
too much in there. And it's weird because it's like, it's a thin park. Like you can kind of, you know, see what's going on, but I think it's just, there's something, you know, the vibe there. You can kind of, I guess from you guys walking, right? Like you get that energy feeling
Sure.
of certain
Definitely.
neighborhoods and things like
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
And
Well-
like, yeah.
We, speaking of the energy feeling, we walked by,
Oh, this is a great spot.
Yeah.
yeah, this is a good spot.
Yeah.
Approaching Bethesda Terrace for those listening.
We walked by the Jeffrey Epstein building earlier today.
Oh yeah, that's full of
And
bad juju.
Yeah, I got shivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have some sort of particular ventilation system so that the air itself is of a different quality around it.
Yeah, I believe that.
It's like a damper noise around there. It was very strange. And the door is like 2.5 times the size of a normal door, and you know, like,
I mean, more than one blood sacrifice happened in that house. You know?
yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but
Yeah.
yeah. So this has always historically been where a lot of great street performance, like another level of street performer,
Yeah.
will be here, and it's almost more of like a classically trained street performer. So like when we were growing up, the famous one was this guy Thoth,
Okay.
who was a violinist. I think that's how you say it, Thoth. And he would dance, and he was like a pretty ripped dude with these long, I think, dreads almost in the back of his hair, but very well kept, like very like perfect physique, almost more like a ballet dancer than a violinist. And he would do these crazy violin solos while singing.
Wow.
And I think if I can find some of the videos online, it's kind of a very unique performance.
Yeah.
And he used to do it in there.
Amazing.
Yeah, we encountered somebody earlier this week, a gentleman that plays the recorder, which is not the most beautiful instrument when you think about it, but in that particular room,
Yeah.
the acoustics are so incredible
Yeah.
that it sounds like this, you know, far eastern magical, like, you know, enchanted kingdom. And he was the nicest guy. I told him about what the project that we were doing, and he was, you know, taken by that as well. So it was a pretty nice moment.
I mean, so, you know, something that's kind of interesting that maybe, you know, we're not really like I'm not as attuned to it as other people, but like in my building that I grew up in, a lot of the artists or performers that worked at Lincoln Center or worked at the Met Opera House lived in the building.
Oh, wow.
And so like on Sundays you hear them practicing and shit, and it was like, you know, some crazy bravado kind of like or falsetto thing happening where it's just
Right.
like, and then piano going all up and down the
And
building.
you can just hear it like from their apartment.
Yeah. And most of
Wow.
these people were rent controlled. Unfortunately, the ones that weren't got pushed out, which sucks.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think so Lincoln Center, right? Like that. Have you ever seen West Side Story?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was shot where I think Lincoln Center used to be. So
Oh.
Lincoln Center used to
Oh,
be
I didn't
like
realize it was somewhere
funny.
else.
used to be a terrible neighborhood.
Okay.
And I guess I don't know the exact history. I just know that they basically heavily invested in that. So like in our parents' lifetimes, that area became like the next Carnegie Hall, the next kind of where
I
all
see.
the
Interesting.
yeah.
But it wasn't like that before.
I guess not. I mean, so
Yeah.
I went to school right behind Lincoln Center.
Is that where you went to high school?
It was my first high school, yeah.
Okay.
And that neighborhood had the worst crime rate in the city at the time, right behind Lincoln Center.
Oh my gosh.
Mainly because of the amount of policing that was around there, so they were just like reporting more
Oh,
crimes. But yeah, it
yeah.
wasn't a great spot. Boat Basin was also, which we're passing right now,
Mm-hmm.
also a huge part of like, my earlier years as a kid, which is like go to the museum, then lunch at the boathouse, which is this thing.
Yeah.
And you'd feed the snapping turtles, which
Oh, they're snapping turtles?
yeah, they're actually
We-
snapping turtles in
We
it.
saw a bunch of turtles. I did not realize that they were snapping turtles.
The ones that
Scary.
used to hang, they might have got rid of them because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Frankly, but like the ones that people are feeding off the edge there used to be snapping turtles.
Wow.
Crazy.
They're kind of gross.
Yeah, they
like
are
the
gross.
water is kind of gross too.
Yeah, oh no,
It's really
I mean
pretty,
everything
but it's
about it
also
is
kinda
disgusting.
gross.
I mean,
Okay.
if you took a net, I'm sure you'd pull out some really disgusting things.
Yeah. It's kind of surprising though, because the boathouse is so pretty.
So this is the other thing. I just want to see this menu.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How's
like
it look?
it doesn't look great. I mean, every food, all the food that was always in the park, like even Tavern on the Green, was always like of the same tier of like, yeah, okay, like this is a steak and this is a thing, and none of it's like very
Right.
creative. None of it's very like, it's all just very very safe
American classic.
American classic.
It's like they went on SimCity and bought a steak and put it on the table in front
Yeah.
of you. Like, I think this is a steak.
Right. And they didn't have like a baker on site, so like the bun is just some bun out of a bag. Like it's just
Right.
like that's
Right.
the general feeling you're getting.
Yeah.
There's no like special touches that you'd like expect from.
Yeah.
Well, we went to Barney Greengrass today,
Yeah.
which was
my
our first time
God.
for both
The
of us to
Sturgeon
go.
King.
Yeah.
Yo, he's the king of everything, to be honest.
Yeah. We had I had the sturgeon with mixed in with the eggs and the onions.
Yes.
And Jesse had the sturgeon on the side.
Yes.
That was I had heard about it from our friend Tom previously, but he was excited about it. So
Did Tom
we
tell
went-
you about popovers that used to be right next door?
No, he didn't. What's that all about?
So do you know what popovers are?
I mean, I do
little,
know,
Like,
yeah.
muffin
Yeah,
things?
so there used to be a place named Popovers right next to it that would do these giant popovers. No matter what you ordered, you got a popover with it. They're gimmicky, but it was like super good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one thing I've never been clear is Barney Greengrass officially a Jewish deli, or is it something I don't know what other category it would be
Or
in?
an
but they-
appetizing, or no, I don't.
appetizing?
I think it's just like a smoked fish.
Yeah, it's
house.
like just a smoked fish shop.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, it was excellent.
because it's
Yeah.
an interesting class of deli.
Yeah,
It doesn't have anything hot. It doesn't have anything. It's just like spreads and locks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there may very well be a category that's more granular that I'm not familiar with. but
Right.
Yeah, we went there. Where else did we go? There was a Ray's Pizza on Broadway in like 102nd that he recommended that I went to. And then he,
And we also went to this Peruvian and Chinese fusion place.
Oh, Florida Mayo?
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Do you know Florida
Dude,
Mayo?
Florida Mayo was like, so you could get a whole chicken, yellow rice and beans
Mm-hmm.
with this like kind of vinaigrette sauce for like $8.
That's literally what
That's
we got.
exactly what we had
Yeah,
yesterday.
we were just like, order for us. And
Yeah.
that's what.
That's the move there, and it's so good.
Yeah.
And they also they have a bunch of other things there that are legitimately better than like they would be at a regular like Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, so they have really good egg foo young. If you're into that. Everything there is so good. Like, but they did raise their prices, which pissed a lot of people off because it used to be the like, hey, everyone that didn't have that much money would just go there and you could just best food in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But now they're like keeping up with the whatever else is happening up here.
Yeah, exactly. When we were growing up, and Tom could probably speak to this, but like when we were growing up, there were basically only a few restaurants in the neighborhood that mattered. So there was Florida Mayo. There was Sal and Carmine's, which like was at the time voted the best pizza in all of New York.
Okay.
I never ever felt that it was the best pizza. It was like a very sweet sauce, which some people are into, but I wasn't.
Maybe it was Sal and Carmine's, maybe it wasn't Ray's, I don't know. But yeah, where do you remember around which streets it was?
Yeah, it was 102nd.
So then it must have been
it was like a very narrow.
Yeah.
So Sal and Carmine's, and then, it is the best pizza on the Upper West Side. I just don't think it was the best pizza in Manhattan.
In the city.
Yeah.
Right.
What's your best? Sorry, we'll get back to the list. But what's your best pizza in the city?
So far, this is just me being like, this is just me being.
Still time.
Yeah, there is still time because there's so much pizza. But
Yeah.
I like Kesse. I think that's how you say it, Kesse.
Okay.
Where's that?
Or Sesse? I don't know, Kesse? It's down on like Spring or something down there. It's one of the village places. I think Roberta's is good. I think their crust is like too thin, to be honest.
I never thought that Roberta's was like, it's not like a slice.
No.
I mean, and I guess when you're talking about best pizza, there's lots of different ways to define best pizza. Like, what are your metrics of best pizza?
There's also just, I think, something about that neighborhood where, like, comparatively, it is really, really good in that area. But, like, yeah. But, yeah, I would say that place. I've heard good things about John on Bleeckers, but, like, you have to order a whole pie, and I've just never done that. Like, down there. But, yeah, so it was Florida Mayo. It was Sal and Carmine's. There was this place called Henry's, which was like the only high-end place you could eat in our neighborhood when we were growing up. Actually just closed, I think, which is really sad, but it was on 105th. Really solid, like oysters, that level of kind of. There was this place called Mama Mexico, which they had a mariachi band that would come around. It was actually kind of annoying. You'd be like sitting there eating, having a conversation, and they would just be blasting in your face.
And like you can't ignore them.
Yeah.
Like you have to like sit and be like,
but it was also like not a big enough restaurant for that to be kind of acceptable.
Okay.
And then every few years, Mama Mexico would go out of business and be named something else, like Rosa Mexicana or something. Like it would just keep changing its name.
And then come back as Mama Mexico.
Yeah, basically, it was just at the end. And then the big one actually, and this is kind of crazy, was on 97th Street. Almost the entire block was this place called Empire Szechuan.
Oh, okay.
And Empire Szechuan was like the best sushi, and also they had Chinese food place in the neighborhood. And I guess the owner maybe had a gambling problem or something.
Okay.
But she was known as the originator of putting her menu under everyone's door. Like she was the one who was like,
she started that
like
trend?
apparently she was like one of the forerunners of like making sure her menu was everywhere.
No way. Did that like time out with cheap printing capabilities or something?
I don't know. I'd look into it because it was really, I mean, there's like a New York Times article on her about it.
Oh, wow.
And then I guess they closed and they reopened a very small, much sadder version of that.
Oh.
And then the last really big restaurant that I can remember was on 86th and Broadway, and it was called Boulevards.
Okay.
And Boulevards was awesome. My friend's dad was the chef there, and he actually passed away, but he was the chef there, and they had every Monday they had all-you-can-eat ribs, which was like amazing because I don't even know if that exists anymore. Like, hey, you can have all the ribs you want for $20.
Right.
Yeah,
like, that's
I
just
don't
like
know
not
where
a
to
thing.
go for that.
And they had these massive burritos. It was so good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, that was Upper West Side food. For the most part.
Did you have a bagel place in particular up there?
Yeah. So that's a good question. There is H&H Bagels.
Yeah, which I don't know if I went to H&H this week.
Yes.
But I wasn't sure if it was a new location or not. Tom had thought it had closed, but then the one we went to was very contemporary inside.
So the original H&H used to be next to Zabar's.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So right next to Zabar, like it was like near that area. I forget exactly
Yeah.
what street, but it was right near there. And the reason why, as a kid, you knew about H&H is that they would do the St. Patty's Day green.
Oh, of course.
They were like the originator of like the colored
bagel.
The
donut.
green bagel?
The green bagel.
Fun.
Like, so they, and that you can only like, H&H was the only one that was really doing them.
Yeah.
Then there's Absolute Bagel.
Absolute I had as
Like,
well
had
this
one of
week. That
those
was
this
Tom's
week, too.
recommendation.
Yeah, so Absolute is really good. When you're a kid, you like Absolute because they would do pizza bagels,
Ooh,
Oh.
fun.
which was like,
big bagel
pizza,
bites.
yeah, big bagel bites.
Yum.
The thing about Absolute Bagels that I really liked was that their inside was a term that I've coined recently, like sawdust on the floor.
Yeah.
Salt in the walls.
Yeah.
Like it was like basically a factory for bagels.
Yeah, it was a cavern of
Yeah.
bagels
Yeah.
and things like yeah.
There's like ducks clearly visible,
yes.
and the signs up on there are just look like Chinese food place signs with all the bagel prices, and they're
So-
browned.
This just reminded me. There were two other. There's Carmine's, which is famous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Internet. So that was started on the Upper West Side, to
Yeah.
my knowledge. Big Italian. You can't order for one. Everything is massive.
Oh, not a bagel place. That's
That's
not
just a
Italian.
different
That's the one where
Italian
you
one.
get the Titanic dessert,
Yeah, just
right?
everything,
Yeah, I went
like-
there once in high school.
And then the other famous place, and I'm drawing a blank what the name of it is, but it's the giant pizza slice place.
Oh.
Jesse brought that up earlier.
I don't know what it's called either, but yeah, I remember like bigger than your face pizza, right?
Yeah, and it's like $1.
Right.
And it's like, and it's disgusting.
And it's not good.
No. But that's on 110th.
Okay.
What's the name of it? Everyone's gonna kill me for not remembering that because that's like a key.
We'll have to look it up and put it in the notes or something, or
Yeah.
whatever. Maybe someone will tell us.
So this.
Belvedere Castle.
Yeah. So
we're
this is
approaching
Belvedere
right now.
Castle. So this is really interesting because the camps that I did go to
Sure.
were day camp in the park, which is like Camp Central Park
Right.
day camp.
So fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. And we would meet up. The parents would drop us off. Like, if you could look over this, Belvedere Castle was a meeting place.
Okay.
So was the dairy mill or
Oh
the
yeah,
dairy.
we walked by there earlier today.
Yeah, and these were like the key places where we'd meet up, and we go into Belvedere, which is like full of like cool little like, terrariums and all sorts of weird little.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I've never been in there. I'll have to go in at some point when it
Yeah,
opens
it's
back
fun
up.
to go in there as you're a kid.
It's really cramped. It kind of freaks you out a little.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it a
definitely
little
not
bit
COVID
like-
friendly.
Does it feel a little bit like a Disney World thing?
No, it feels
Oh,
more
okay.
like this was like it feels very much like it was not built as a tourist attraction.
Oh.
It was.
Or
It's
like
almost,
for kids to be running around in.
it almost feels like they actually built this to defend against something. Like I don't
Okay.
know. Like
What they were expecting.
Do you
I don't
think
know.
it's possible that they did?
No,
I mean, it's like in the center of it's like the worst place to have a look at.
Yeah, I just don't think they really walked the thing before they finished. Like they didn't really get a sense of, hey, maybe these stairwells should be wider, or
Right.
like it's a lot of because it's like a curved staircase going up. It's a lot of listening and waiting to hear if someone's walking down because then you can't.
Because it's like a one person.
Yeah.
Right.
So you recently got married.
Yes, I did.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
To next week's guest.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear the other half,
Yeah.
that'll be next week. But if I understand correctly, you did get married in the park, yes?
We did. We got married though in Riverside at the
Oh,
Sailor
okay.
and Soldiers Monument, which is where her mother and father got married a bunch of years ago.
No way.
Yeah, and it was really cool actually. So it was like right as we were all gearing down from. So we'd been planning for a while. We knew it wanted to be small, and it was almost like it was starting to grow to become this kind of big thing. All these people wanted to come.
Mm-hmm.
We started getting a weird pressure from family who had like previously been like, we don't care, until all of a sudden like we're gonna fly in.
Oh,
At the
no.
most dangerous time.
Yeah, we're like, what? And then also there was a lot of like rebellious old people being like, we don't care about COVID,
Oh,
we'll
no.
come. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And so we did not have, our license got, like our permit to be married there got revoked
Oh.
because of COVID. And then I looked online and it just became kind of a free-for-all, which was like, you can just be there, but no more than like X number of people. And we
Right.
were at that limit. So we just showed up and my mom brought a bunch of sake and like hors d'oeuvres and stuff. And None of us touched the hors d'oeuvres because that was clearly like a COVID thing.
Yeah, right.
But we did all have individual bottles of sake.
Oh.
And you know, her grandma got to be there. We retook some pictures that her mom and dad had taken, like kind of reenacting them.
That's so nice.
Kind of an interesting thing in the background is that the flag is at half staff, which is kind of a weird historical kind of thing. But generally we got in right at this point where we were getting married. All these old people are walking by, like these random old people, and they're like, oh, this gives us hope, thank you so much, like saying all this nice stuff to us, because I had so much anxiety. I was like, are we gonna get called out for having a group? Like,
Right.
and instead everyone was just like, yes, like we love that, it was great. And all the people's responses online, seeing the photos, were all like really positive, which was really cool. Which I don't know why I think about other people's opinions so much in that way, but I think I felt a responsibility a bit,
Yeah.
like in this environment. And we tried to be as safe about it as possible. And then it came in right as as New York started gearing down from COVID.
Oh, yeah.
So like we were all feeling a little bit better about it. We weren't hearing sirens all night. We were like
Right.
in a good place. She looked beautiful, which is so cool.
Yeah.
She bought her dress online, which is cool.
Really? And
Yes.
it fit perfectly?
It fit perfectly. She looked great.
Amazing.
And we then had the wedding, and I guess the next day, I want to say, or within 2 days,
Yeah.
the protests started to happen.
Oh, right. It was right in that
Yeah, it was just like this
in-between-
one moment where it was the dip and right before the rise.
Right.
Yeah. Like that real, like, sort of, like, no one
Calm
was
before
feeling
a storm.
super safe yet,
No.
but, like, calm
Yeah.
and, like, a little bit, like, ready for the next thing.
Yeah. And at our wedding, we had 2 officiants. One was
Oh.
Carell, who is Alexa's neuroscientist. He's our friend, neuroscientist. He's like 6'7" or something.
Yeah.
He was one officiant. He's like Alexa's like #1 since like forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like partner in crime kind of thing.
Yeah.
Height's really important in an officiant, you know?
Yeah, oh God.
So
he
many
was,
tasks you could potentially, last second things.
I know,
like,
oh man.
yeah.
Adjust this.
Yeah, the height he was controlling the entire
Right.
environment. He
Yeah.
had good control, good
Yeah.
crowd control, I would say.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes
Um,
sense.
And then we had Brian, who wrote
Yeah.
all this really nice stuff that was like, wow, this man has a journal and he writes in it a lot, and he was really, really thoughtful
Aw.
about and saying things about Alexa and I that were just really nice. And I think
Yeah.
he went the extra mile, and it was very nice. And
That's great.
it was really cool to know that you have people like that in your life that really, really care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my mom and Alexa's mom were blown away by Brian, and it was just like a sweet little thing, you know.
That's so nice.
So yeah, he did a really good job.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it's cool. It was cool. It was a nice experience.
And so, were you? I mean, you were familiar to some degree with that aspect of the park, but like, was it like an area you were particularly familiar with,
Yeah.
or?
So the
you know?
funny thing about that.
So
Yeah.
the
Let
drums
me
that
tell
I
you-
did.
Yeah, let me tell you about that place. So when you're growing up, there's like in the city and you start drinking, right? It's okay. What are your options? You can't drink on the street, which only until recently. This is so crazy to me that people are drinking on the street
I
because
know.
Right.
growing up here, it's like just not allowed at
Yeah.
all.
Right.
And even brown bagging at growing up, you just
Was like
no,
so
you
obvious.
get fucking
Yeah.
arrested.
Yeah.
Right. Especially as a kid. Like, you're not only, it's illegal, but also you're underage, so it's double illegal.
So yeah, so the thing where you smoke from the ages of like 12 to like 16 or 15, let's say,
Uh-huh.
you're in this period where like your parents are not leaving you at home for the weekend that
Right.
much. It's not like you're always having free houses and things like that. And if you are, the neighbor is like looking through their peephole at a bunch of kids coming into their neighbor's apartment and then just tells your mom afterwards or something.
Right.
Or you're shoving towels into the doorway trying to, I hope no one smells anything. But you're living in a building surrounded by 500 other nosy
Right.
people.
Right.
And so like
And they all probably like know that you're the New York kid.
yeah, so I had
Yeah.
I had a neighbor that was like this woman who had no other time. Like she had endless time. So she could just, I think she had a seat next to the people in the door and just report everything that would ever happen. So what you're doing is like you're barely drinking in apartments. What you're doing is you're going places where no one else is, which is also kind of dangerous. So you're like,
Right.
you're drinking in the stairwells of friends' buildings that happen to not have doormen.
Right.
Or you're, the amount of times that you're drinking in a stairwell that you don't even know whose building it is. You just one time were there and know that the door doesn't lock. Or
Right,
something.
right. Yeah.
That's what you're doing. But the main place you're drinking is the park. You're going into, because what happens at night is the rules of the park are basically that there's very few. Once dusk hits, you're not allowed to be in here. It's like some like vampire rules. Like it's dusk. What time is dusk? I don't know. 6 p.m.
It changes throughout the year.
Yeah, it changes throughout the year. So
whatever
it's
time
like,
we want it to be.
it's whatever time. So like, you basically aren't allowed to be here after dusk. And the deeper you get into the park, and the more you're like surrounded by foliage, the less the cops are going to see you. Like they're literally so lazy. They're just like
they're not
scanning
like
a
going
light.
in the park.
Yeah, well, no, they are, but they're just like they'll have a cop drive here in like a little like buggy or something,
Right.
and he'll just like lazily look. And as long as you're not on the field, you're fine.
Right.
So the main place we used to drink was the Sailor and Soldiers Monument, because Riverside Park is not a fun place to drive down into, and so cops didn't like driving down in there.
Right.
And every night, every weekend, right, we would all be down there drinking. There'd be like hundreds of kids.
Oh my gosh.
And they were all drinking, the same thing. It was Valentine's, Colt 45, or Budweiser.
Yeah.
Because it was cheap, and because you didn't have to carry a six-pack, and like,
Right.
it was just, I don't even know why it was those things.
We might be like blowing up the spot of the current like 12
I
to
hope
15-year-olds.
so. You know what?
All their parents are going to listen to this podcast
roaches.
and go down there.
They need to, they need to be challenged, and that's why we gotta, But yeah, but every weekend the cops would do these like massive stings where they would like come from multiple angles, just trying to arrest kids for drinking.
Oh my gosh.
Which is just a strange. Like I can't imagine being the cops in that unit. That's your life. It's
Right.
like herding drunk
Just-
12-year-olds.
Let's give a musical interlude here for a second. Carry on.
Yeah, that was good. I like that.
Yeah.
Though. I mean, I could just listen to that all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's jazz.
I wish every podcast episode we could just stumble
you're-
on bands.
You're just
know,
getting
right?
music
Yeah,
so
free
much.
music.
It's like, wow, this is a Hey
Royalty
Arnold
free.
city.
Yeah, that's
We live in Hey Arnold. Alexa and I were really pissed off the other day because we looked up. We were like, oh yeah, Hey Arnold's in New York. I wonder which train line it's on. And we look it up, and the guy's like, yeah, it's not really New York. It's a mixture of cities. I'm like, bullshit.
Oh yeah, it's definitely New
It's
York.
clearly New York.
Yeah.
Like, he was saying he was very inspired by Seattle. I was like, well, what are you
Where in
talking
Seattle?
about? Where in
Yeah.
Seattle do you
He's
have
never
above
been to
ground
Seattle.
trains?
Was it cloudy most of the
I don't
time?
know.
I don't.
But yeah. And apparently, originally the show was supposed to be about Helga, but it wasn't testing well.
wow.
Well, nowadays it'd be about Helga.
Yeah. But I mean, good point.
I thought Helga was a more interesting character than Arnold. I mean, frankly, I guess.
Well, so Arnold is interesting because he's just a good vehicle for everyone.
Yeah.
He's not really.
He's
a
like
char-
Seinfeld.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or like Charlie Brown.
He's not.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, we saw. I think there was an episode where he learns karate and he becomes like really abusive. Right. And it's like, and every episode ends with like kind of like not a happy ending.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So you're there with all the kids. I mean, I guess you're drinking,
Yeah.
which gives you a feeling of immunity. But like, did you ever really feel any anxiety about being in the park after
Oh
dark?
God, yes, all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
So
This is why New Yorkers are neurotic.
So
because
we-
they drink in dangerous situations all the time.
yeah, so that
As
makes,
children.
So I mean, you're not the cops aren't the only thing you have to worry about when you're in the park alone. You also have to worry about like crazy crackheads in the park,
Right.
or
Yeah.
other older teenagers that are there just to fuck with you and steal your shit.
Right.
So there's that, and then there's also this feeling of like your guard is always up. And also, teenagers are assholes, right? Like, even if within your friend group, when somebody gets too drunk and then starts trying to show off or do something, then it can
Right.
just end badly, always.
And then what do you do? Because it's like you weren't supposed to be there, so who do you like call or what?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. So that was definitely like one of the like unspoken rules, or maybe it was spoken, I don't even think there weren't written rules in it, but nobody called their mom ever about anything. No one ever called their parents, nobody ever, and the only time that ever really happened was, no one ever did it. It was only if you got caught and then had to kind of like face your, crimes. Some cases, like I remember one of my friends was doing graffiti or something, and he was like 12, and he got caught, and all of a sudden there's this question, oh, was anybody with you, or is anybody blah, 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 blah. And that's kind of like a weird situation you don't want to be in. You don't want to be in a situation where you're like being forced to like legally admit that your friends did something. I don't know.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But generally, I never got actually caught doing anything. But I had that like anxiety constantly.
Right. Well, that was why you didn't get caught.
Yeah, no, I was always on my toes.
Yeah.
Why, Chris, why are you drinking so far away from us? Don't worry about it. Like, I was like laying out, I can run faster than you. You're the bait. You guys are being loud. And, even to this day, when I hang out with people that are really loud, I have this weird thing.
So when you're seeing Brian.
I have this weird thing where I kind of step away and become a little more quiet. And I think it has to do with that drinking dynamic of like, the louder you are, the more likely you are to get caught. Like, that's just going in my head.
Right.
It's like, we're in a bar. Why are you acting like that?
Right. Like, it doesn't. but it is like, there's more of a chance that you're going to get like nasty looks from strangers, or like the bartender is going to come over and be like, you guys are being too much.
Yes.
Like, it's not the same. Like, you're not going to have like your parents show up all of a sudden and be like, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But like, or the cops, but like, you could have someone as an adult come over to your group and be like, you guys suck.
You could be dealing
with that. And that's embarrassing.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, having grown up here and having grown up where you grew up, I'm sure that there are more than a couple of people of interest that people listening may have heard of in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Would you care to take us down that road and tell us a few famous folks?
Yeah, sure. So I know what you're getting at. So
there's really actually at least 3 avenues that I'm thinking of. Maybe more I don't know. One of the I think for the purposes of this I could go over is, so my stepdad was this famous FIFA guy. Well, let's just like not say his name because it's just kind of whatever. Yeah, that's
fine.
And
he was a very eccentric person who also got like arrested by the FBI and like totally corrupt, crazy person. Anyway, my mom, when she was dating him, we lived with him. We left the Upper West Side, and we lived with him from when I was about 12 to about 22, 23, something like that.
Okay.
And where we lived in Trump Tower, which is the official, like it is the Trump Tower. So it's where Trump lived, it's where Michael Jackson lived, it's where, all these people lived. And
this is referring to the one on
56 and 5th.
Right.
And so if you look at it now, there's like, barricades that they built, like of a mobile military.
The Imperial March is being played by some unseen band constantly.
Right.
And it's like, but when I was growing up, my experience with it was, so these are like my formative years. I'm coming back home at like 3 a.m, drunk.
Right.
And you walk into this, first of all, you're not walking into a house. You're not walking into your apartment. You're not like able to kind of sneak into your bedroom. You're walking into a brightly lit, fully staffed lobby.
Right.
With like eight doormen that know your parents and know your mom and know your whatever.
Right.
But there's also a culture in the building that everybody's kids are like this, so it's like kind of like don't ask, don't tell kind of thing.
And they're also in a way like, if they don't know what type of kid you are. Like, if they get you in trouble, are you the kind of kid that's gonna get them in trouble?
Right, and that actually was pretty common. Like, doormen just knew not to mess with anybody. Everybody there was very high maintenance. Everybody there was like pretty terrible, I would say.
Right.
A bunch of the like multiple people in the building, the times I lived there, were arrested for all sorts of white collar nonsense.
Right.
Like, one of the more famous ones was, I think, Anne Hathaway's husband lived there.
Oh.
and he, or boyfriend, and he got arrested for all sorts of shit at the time.
Wow.
Anyway, so I lived there, and then you get in the elevator, and you're going to press the button, but you're not allowed to press the buttons. There's another guy there to press the buttons for you.
Right.
And then you get in the apartment, and it's a totally weird. I lived on the 49th floor.
Wow.
And so we got to overlook all of Manhattan, and that was cool. That part of it was cool, but you learn about a side of Manhattan being in that kind of, not even New York City. It's like specifically Manhattan. They don't, like, a lot of these people don't leave Manhattan. That's
right.
like to them, Manhattan is New York, and New York is Manhattan, and it's nothing else.
Right. And the outer boroughs are just outer.
Yeah,
boroughs.
like, why are we even talking about that?
Right.
And you start to realize there's this kind of culture up there where, the people that are in that kind of circle are no smarter than any of us, right? They're just a little more, they're more conniving, and they're more whatever, and they'll do whatever it takes. They're more ruthless and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, like, you could easily come to a lot of the same conclusions that they're all coming to. It's just a question of whether you would do it or not.
Right. It's like maybe morals or ethics.
Yeah, it's
to
not
some
intelligence,
degree,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, it's actually like a lack of intelligence that causes them to kind of stumble through. I would say the thing that's most common is persistence, though. All of them are so fucking persistent in getting what they want and all that type of stuff. But you also realize other things, like, the restaurant Tao, right? You go to Tao and you're sitting there and you're like, hey, this is a nice restaurant, this is good food. It's not really what it is. Tao and Nobu are like places where it's full of like very high-end prostitutes and like businessmen.
Okay.
And when you look at it and you see it in that way, you realize it's not really a restaurant. It's more of like, I don't even know.
Like a place to parade?
I guess, something like that. And you realize, when you look around, you see every table is like a very old man and a very young woman, a very old man, very young woman. It's not the same thing as a restaurant to me. It's like something else is happening there.
Right.
And are either of those inside Trump Tower? Are there restaurants inside?
Yeah, well, I don't know what he was talking about, but Trump said that there were really good taco bowls in his building, but I don't remember those being there. There was a Tower Records, and there was like an ice cream shop, and there was like a bunch of, basically like nothing to write home about type of places.
Right.
I think there was one like Trump steak house or something, or there was like a steak place for business lunches and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so did you ever encounter the man himself?
Yeah, I did, and it was not. So he was friends with my stepdad, and my stepdad was more friends with his brother. His brother was like a pretty cool guy, with my stepdad at least. And I don't know of him from my perspective. He was a cool guy. I just know that him and my stepdad had a pretty good relationship, and then also my stepdad and Trump had a pretty good relationship.
Okay.
But I don't know what it really means to say like people in that world have good relationships, because like they're not the same as friendships. They're not like, they're more of like, this person's in my Rolodex and they'll be willing to do favors for me because they know that the favors I can provide are of value. Like, it's just like a transactional kind of.
It's not like we're gonna get together and like watch a movie and have a nice conversation about like what's going on in our personal lives, and more like, I'll call you when I need something.
Yeah, basically. But I do think that Trump's brother and my stepdad were actually legitimate friends.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what would happen is I would see him get in the elevator, and I was like a real grubby, degenerate kid.
You were coming back from the statues.
I would come back from the statues. I reeked. Like, I wasn't really showering that. Like, it was like a little punk kind of like.
Right.
Were you like rebelling against
no,
that? Like,
I just didn't. I just didn't care about it. Like, it was so cool because like I didn't even listen to music when I was like younger. Like, it was just a weird thing. I was a weird subculture of just like myself, of like, I didn't listen to music, but because I didn't care about stuff, I guess that put me more into like a punk vibe circle. But I also didn't dress like, I wore sweatpants and like t-shirts all the time. I just wasn't like, I literally looked like pretty homeless.
But like, maybe the kids that were like trying to be punk saw you and were like, oh, he's like our king or something.
No, I wasn't.
Oh,
I
no.
think I was more like just kind of funny to the people, everyone.
Okay.
And so I would come home, and I would be in the elevator with Trump, and I used to be so self-conscious about that because like he's a pretty tall dude, and he owns the building. And I think at a certain point I must have been really gross one day. He like did not like the vibe I was giving off, or probably smelled terribly.
Oh.
And from that point forward, every time he saw me, he would go like this, get in the elevator, and make it close so he didn't have to ride it with me.
Oh my god!
And that happened like multiple times.
Like he remembered
Yeah,
you?
no, yeah, he remembered me.
Wow.
Yeah. So he was. I never talked to him, never said anything. My mom talked to him a few times because he shot a commercial in our house for Trump University.
Okay.
In your house?
In our
Like
house.
in your apartment?
Yeah, because our house had like good views and shit. It was nice, and so the finish inside of our house, and I don't know if this, so I've been in a few of the apartments in the building, and basically the big difference between them is, in terms of the finish inside, is you basically get this very large floor-to-ceiling windows, but there's like a divider more towards the bottom 75% that gives you these like little windows. Mm-hmm. And usually they're finished with like a brushed black aluminum or something.
Okay, yeah.
But it's like a black trim, basically, black metal trim. And then other apartments have a gold finish.
Okay.
So very gaudy interior, like all gold, everything. I remember one time I was selling. By the way, this is my favorite part of Central Park.
Yeah,
the yes.
the
So,
reservoir
For
is
those
so
listening,
nice.
we're at the reservoir. It's the Jackie Onassis Reservoir, correct?
Yeah, so she used to jog every morning all around here.
Makes sense.
Oh.
Yeah, and but the coolest thing to do here, and you'd only know this by coming here at night, so you know, full circle, is if you go to the northmost section of the reservoir and you look back towards the city.
Yeah.
Because you get this unique double reflection of the city
Oh,
that you
cool.
kind of get in southern Brooklyn, and you kind of get other places, but it's a very unique double reflection over the reservoir. And any place in Manhattan that you can get a pretty wide expanse of like nothingness and then large building tends to create this really weird like emotional feeling. So like, because it's not common, because you're so claustrophobic the whole time.
Right.
So whenever you have like this distance between us divided by the reservoir, it happens at ground zero, you know, that amount of space of not having a tall building and then massive building, it's so striking in some way.
Yeah, it gives you like a sense of wonder.
Yeah.
Like even though we were just over there, it's like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That actually, if you care, those two buildings, that's the
Yeah.
they shot Ghostbusters there.
Really?
Oh, is that where the...
Yeah, it's the end of the movie.
Yeah,
is-
of course.
Oh.
So the
That
go-
makes sense.
the
Nice
I think
building.
the reason they chose that was because there's two of them, and they could, I think, it was a production reason. I feel like.
Right.
So anyway, the university commercial.
Yes. So he was shooting the university commercial in our apartment. He, from what I've been told, he goes like a step above only drinking bottled water, which is it's bottled water that's been boiled.
What?
So and then cooled.
And then cooled?
Yeah. So that's like a thing.
Oh my god. It's insane.
But you know, before knowing his political views and all these other things, you could just look at him as like a character.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I think when you looked at him as just like this kind of character, this businessman with a family and blah blah blah, as you know, as long as you weren't doing business with him, as long as you weren't knowing his deep personal opinions of things or the level of narcissism, whatever, you could kind of see him as like, all right, like, fine, he's a character. That's a New York character.
Sure.
Right.
But that was kind of, I think, the difference between 10 years ago and now, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're realizing that with all those quote unquote characters, that there's actually a lot of like deep fucking problems with that stuff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I think that's like a lot of people are able to kind of float by and be like laughed off, right? Like, oh, you're just a character, you're just a joke, you're just whatever. Like so extreme.
Yeah.
And then you don't expect them to become the president. Like,
Yeah,
you don't
I
expect
mean-
them to even come close to that. You think they're just this like side thing that's entertainment.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think that you would expect somebody who has no qualms about being unable to reconcile anything going on in their lives to form a consistency to make it as far as he did.
Yeah. I mean,
Like-
even just the story, like you saying that you were this like young kid that was like a little like stinky or something,
I was
like,
probably
and
pretty
he like
bad.
was refusing to
Yeah.
let you in the elevator. Meanwhile, like in the past, like presidents were like kissing babies and
Right.
like being nice to it, you know. And he's like, no, you can't ride this elevator with me. That's so.
I sometimes
mean.
wonder about him though. I wonder if if he did have success in tech, or if he found some success in something other than what he was doing. Is it just that he was, because there's that Hunter S. Thompson quote about people chasing the presidency like a bull or moose in heat, and they'll do anything to get it, and it's a rare conquest kind of thing where they're just like obsessed with it. And everybody looking for president is in that mode because it's just this, it's so alluring, right? No matter how good of a, like even if you look at Bernie Sanders, right, there's something that is driving him to want to be the thing, and it's just, you have to pay attention to that a little bit. And sometimes I wonder with him, you know, was that the only direction he could have been driven to this extent in, or could he have just maybe found success somewhere else and we just would have never heard of him?
Right, like would he have been satisfied if he had actually had some sort of like real successful connection
on his own, like right, like creating his own. Because he did, but like it was very much of the vibe of his father's legacy and all this type of stuff. I don't know. I just think about it because where he is now, even from the public image, feels so separated from who he was. You know, he's a talk show host, basically. I mean, he's like I mean, that was the big thing, was when I would go into my apartment, there were all these like Midwestern people going, is this where actually that was, when he got elected, I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense, because every day that I would come out of the house, there'd be a line of people from like the Midwest, usually pretty overweight, being like, is this where Mr. Trump lives?
Oh my gosh.
And they'd be like, gotta go around the other side. But is this where the Prince shot? Like, and I think I'd love to see the ratings of The Apprentice overlapped with like voter.
Oh my gosh.
Kind of.
Like viewership, like where people viewed it, and like.
Oh yeah, no, I don't
absolutely.
think I don't think that's a secret. I feel like that's something that's been pretty widely discussed. That he was a reality TV show president. And there are all these people that, frankly, I mean, the middle of the country has been very neglected by the liberal elite. And unfortunately, the liberal elite were the only ones that were actually showing any even token appreciation for people. You know, and so if they were being excluded, there was this empty hole that a complete opportunist could take over with just completely empty political sounding things. And that's
I mean, it's just it's crazy to think about, just because I mean, growing up in that building, it's the last thing you think about. I mean, the building to me was like, so that building is seen as one of his only like majorly successful real estate investments, or maybe it's seen as his most successful, because it actually like never was at risk of being in foreclosure or like bankruptcy.
Right.
Like, it's like actually a, you know, whatever they did a good job with that thing. And you look at the cesspool that's in that building and all the drama in that building. I mean, my stepdad used to live in the top floor. So the top floor is 2 units. It's Trump's apartment, which is I think a 3-story or 2-story duplex, and it's another unit.
Okay.
And so you get out of the elevator, and it's these 2 units, and I don't know how the elevator opens up into them. I don't know if there's a foyer or there's like or you can see both apartments, or they open up separately. I'm not quite sure, but he said when he moved in, so my stepdad used to live in the other one.
Okay, yeah.
And that's how he became friends with them. And he said when he moved in, the previous tenant was Michael Jackson.
Wow.
And he got in there, and there are all these mannequins everywhere. And on the walls, there was no wallpaper, but there was just phone numbers written all over the walls.
Wow.
And like, you can just see it, right? You can see like Michael Jackson on the phone, just like, yeah, let me have your number, and not even caring that he's ruining this, like that's a concept.
That he's living in like the penthouse of this like super.
Just writing all over the walls.
Wow.
strange.
So they didn't paint that over before?
No, I guess not. They just left.
That's interesting.
Because so a lot
I guess there's no like security deposit to get back.
Well, most of the units
like
are not owned by Trump. Most of the units are owned by somebody who then rents out the apartment.
I see.
Yeah.
So what are some other, when you think about Central Park, what are some other things that come to mind with respect to childhood?
I mean, I think, so the soccer league, we passed by that field where there are all the soccer leagues, which is kind of a cool thing. There's conservatory gardens up there, my camp, all that type of stuff. You know, it's like, when you're younger, this is where you kind of like hang out with girls and stuff, and that's kind of the excitement there. And then also just, it's the first place that I think your parents are like okay with you being on your own.
Okay.
So like,
there's no like running out into traffic or.
Yeah, I mean, they're not like, you know, sure, kids are like, there's that fear that you'll get kidnapped or whatever, but some of the first stories I remember of kids having like autonomy was the kids who had tennis lessons in Central Park. Their parents would just leave them at the edge and the kids would walk to the tennis lesson.
Wow, yeah.
It was a pretty far distance. Like, if you were able to walk to school, like that was 4 blocks. That was like a big deal.
Right.
Like, you walk to school alone. And then also just like Lasker Pool up at the top on 110th.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's
what's
empty
that?
right now.
Yeah, that was so cool. We would basically be swimming in there, and that was like every day of the summer.
Is that a New York City like public pool?
Yeah, it's a public pool.
Cool.
Very big, like Olympic size, I think.
Wow.
And there's also a lot of really weird kind of architecture near there. So there's like a few. So whenever you walk through a tunnel in Central Park, if you take a look at the wall and try to look for stones, you'll see like remnants of garnet.
Oh, wow.
So garnet is kind of like a cool thing, and up there in particular, a lot of the tunnels have a substantial amount of like garnet in them, which is kind of cool. And there's also a lot of there's a crawfish kind of population, I guess, up by Lasker.
Like the animal?
Yeah, like little like crawdads.
Oh, wow.
So this
I
is
didn't know that
this
they
is
lived
the
around here.
the skyline that gets double
Oh
reflected
my
at
gosh,
night.
yeah.
So you can kind of see how that could be cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Now that they've added that skinny little
God, that shit
middle
is such
finger.
Yeah, do you know
Like
anything
that.
about those 2 towers there?
So generally, New Yorkers look at the new skyline with a lot of anger.
Of course.
Partially, we have the history of 9/11 where we kind of like really we're talking about whether we build back or not, or back or not. And then, which COVID and those buildings finally opening to the public is kind of like a very interesting thing, because those were turning into, and they had already kind of established like the Shed and Hudson Yards
Right.
and kind of all that, but down by the Oculus they were starting to actually get a little bit more of like, hey, this isn't just a sad place, this is also a place that you can like hang out kind of
yeah,
thing.
I've been seeing that and it makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, in terms of what?
In terms of just like, I don't want to go to your smorgasbord
No,
food court
no.
at the World Trade
Yeah,
Center.
no, exactly.
So it's kind of like that's if anything is gonna close down for COVID, I don't mind that.
No,
closing
totally.
down.
It's just interesting that like, I don't know how I feel about it, right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, like, to be honest, like, you know, I still get a sharp pain in my chest whenever I think about, like, anytime I get a meeting at work scheduled on 9/11,
Yeah.
I go, ugh. Like,
Right.
and people,
Yeah.
and then anytime people just keep saying September 11th, like, really freely,
When it's as if it's just a date.
as if it's just a date,
Yeah.
I still can't, I have so much baggage tied to it.
Of
Right.
course, yeah.
Like, you know, for people who don't know, my dad was like a first responder and he got super sick from that, passed many years later, but the cause was seen as that site because the type of cancer he got was really like a very rare form that a bunch of people who responded got.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, I just have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah.
I also have, I found that people from New York are people that who were directly affected by it, like directly affected in terms of they've lost somebody, or they were, you know, were here smelling the electrical fumes coming up. they tend to be a lot more reserved in how they talk about it and how they react to it. Like, you don't really know if it's affecting them, but I can tell you it definitely is. Like, whereas when you talk to people from other states, you hear a lot of different stories. You hear like, I signed up for the military because of this, or like a different reaction than New Yorkers had, I think.
Right.
Or people directly, and you'll also hear people talk about how, you know, almost like it almost feels like there's like an exponential effect to the people that weren't here because they could only kind of assume that fear. And it's one of those things when you worry about other people, right? You kind of can make it big into a bigger thing. I feel like that's kind of how I've seen it affect other people. Is it's almost like, I'm not saying I had closure with it or anything like that, but like when you're here and you know that for a fact you felt something, you know how to feel about it. And for a lot of people, it was something that they just saw on TV, and so I think they never really had that maybe reality,
that personal connection,
And I think it left a lot open for a lot of people in that way. But I don't know. I mean, this is the first year with COVID that they're not going to do the in-person name roll call or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
So, you know, it almost feels like one of those things where, like, you miss a birthday and then maybe you just don't do one next year.
Right.
Like, it might be that. I don't know. But
although next year will be a 10.
Oh, that's right.
You know, it'll be the 20th.
20th,
year.
yeah. So they're not gonna lose out on that.
Yeah.
No, they'll do something.
But those buildings. So just back to those buildings. So tall buildings growing in New York has a lot of baggage.
Right.
The fact that those buildings cast a shadow over Central Park, also a problem.
Yeah.
Also the fact that those buildings are ugly and they're not architectural achievements other than like in the same way that who can build the tallest straw tower is an achievement.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Like, and then the third thing is, and this is always the most fun thing to do, is when you walk in the city and you see an ugly ass building or like a new condo, you have to look at how many lights are on in those buildings. And nowadays with COVID, it's actually especially interesting.
Yeah.
You look at how many lights are on at night, and usually that's somewhat indicative of how many people live there.
Of people are actually living there,
And
right?
those buildings, even before COVID, had like nobody living in them. Now people own the apartments because that's what they are. They're basically a way to deposit foreign money into a savings that isn't actually a savings. It's, you know, equity or whatever. But like, so
it's not really adding to like the community in any way.
No.
Yeah, we were pretty far in the center of the park, and at one point one of those new buildings was the only building you could see. And I'm like, oh good.
It's the worst.
I never want to be able to escape the reminder that there's this ugly ass building right on the other side of the park.
It's also just like, the buildings don't even have names that we care about. Like, you know, if you walk inside the
Q-tip or something,
If you walk inside the Chrysler building and you look at the architecture, the Chrysler building is built out of like, there's car parts in the lot. Like this is the building by Chrysler, for Chrysler, and it's probably the most, in my opinion, that and the Crown building are probably my two favorite.
Which one's the Crown building?
It's right near there.
Oh.
It's
Oh, is it the one on the corner of
It's
Madison
like a Midtown
Square
building.
Park?
Like, I'll send you a link.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where it is, but it's like one of my favorite buildings. But yeah, that shit just pisses me off. I hate it.
Yeah.
I also, like, I get the same reaction a little bit whenever I'm like so actually this is kind of interesting. I don't have a particularly close connection with Brooklyn.
Okay.
In terms of like as a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Like I am an Upper West Side New Yorker. I'm not a Brooklyn New Yorker.
Yeah.
But there is that like city camaraderie. And so when I walk through, and I hung out in Park Slope all the time growing up. Like it's not like that's not part of my, you know, childhood, but but when I walk through there and I see like a brand new high rise and I see kind of like this non-communal culture in those areas. Like you see a lot in LIC, to be honest.
Yes.
Where it's like, where's the supermarket?
Yeah,
Do you guys
it
live here?
It feels like it's just offices or something.
Yeah,
and like a downtown of a city that doesn't exist anymore. Or something.
And those are the things that just piss me off. Is they go, because like you can just see this trend of like, hey, if this continues, that whole idea of Hey Arnold and like the city being this place full of urban legend and lore and blah 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 blah. None of these people are creators.
Yeah.
None of these people are like. None of these people have this interesting cultural baggage that they're or ideas that they're bringing to the table that cause this friction that causes and creates like the amazingness of New York City. These are people that are going to live in their house and then go to work and live in their house and go to work and live in their house, and you're never going to know what they do for a living. You're never going to know how they're contributing, who they are as people.
Right.
Like it's just.
And it's like it's the artists and the creative people and the people with the new ideas that make the city vibrant and exciting and make it a place that people want to set up shop and have businesses and have other things going on. And if all those people kind of get pushed away and all the vibrancy goes away, then what are you left with?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing that I always think about is that a lot of people maybe a generation older than us think about New York in terms of pre and post 9/11, especially if you look at the music scene. If you read like Meet Me in the Bathroom or whatever, which is like, you know, the Strokes coming up and all this stuff, it's like, it's about a post 9/11 New York.
Okay.
And you look at kind of like what's going on in Bushwick around that time, of this time of like great uncertainty, or what's happening in Williamsburg and watch out. And you look at the art that comes out of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember going to Williamsburg in early 2000s and like, I mean, just being like, wow, this place is a shithole.
Right.
But that's what made that possible. Like the McKibben lofts and like these massively, you know, low rent but highly collaborative, cheap places. And then you have all these people flocking to consume that, to get closer just to consume it, who aren't really contributing to that collaboration, right? Like, and I think that's, I don't know. I'm hoping that one of the, if you can find silver linings and things, I'm hoping that maybe New York, out of all this, gets back to a period where we can, as New Yorkers, breathe.
Yeah.
And get back into that creativity and get back into that collaboration.
I sure hope so. And people are having a moment right now where even though it's scary and upsetting, and obviously no one is happy that there's a pandemic that we're all living through.
No.
Or a, you know, social revolution. I mean, that is exciting and amazing. It's good that we're having all of these like conversations about what it means to live a happy life. And I think that's related to having a happy city and a creative city.
Sure. Well, it's up to us.
Yeah.
I guess it is up to us.
We'll just keep walking.
I mean, look at this, right? I mean, you know about the ComShip stuff we've been doing, where like all these people are deving and doing art every night because they don't really have much else to do. And luckily, video games is like a collaborative thing, because basically it requires like 10,000 years of knowledge just to make, you know, you can't be, I mean, sometimes you can do everything, but it's very rare. And so it's been kind of cool. You know, every night we kind of get together on Discord and we just try to, you know, work on projects and stuff like that. And that's actually, Brian's been really good about, he's so good at bringing like communities together and getting people like really into it. And he's just been, that energy in that platform is just creating such a draw, I think, for so many people to come and kind of collaborate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing to focus on then, is like the individual level stuff. Like we can't necessarily do anything about the big ugly like monsters in the sky that are being built and surrounding us, but we can make sure that there's still these creative interactions between ourselves.
You want to go down? Have you seen them here?
Let's go down there.
Let's go down there. I actually got some of this for our weekly 360 video.
This is where the crawfish are.
Yeah.
Oh, this is where the crawfish are?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see these crawfish.
So this is a good opportunity to talk about one of the things that happened this week.
Yeah.
We, on
It was Micah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, is that what it is? We
yeah.
were wondering.
Yeah.
On Wednesday and Thursday, it rained both days. And on Thursday in particular, it rained quite a bit in the morning. I don't know if it rained near you or not.
Yeah.
But
it rained an incredible amount.
Yeah, something that we're discovering as we do this more and more is that the forecasts that you get on your weather channel or on your phone are like way more fragile and susceptible to human error, and that percent chance they give is actually a percent chance and not a reality. And I think when you spend a lot of your time indoors, it's not the case. It rains, okay, it rained. But when you're really living for the hour by hour forecast,
it matters.
It's significantly different.
Yeah.
And a lot of the pain and anxiety you experience from weather, whether it's going to rain or not, is based on like your actual mental forecast of what it's going to be and not the actual reality of what's happening.
So are you saying are you saying that you basically, your mental state almost puts it into the mode of whether, or like it's a self-reality or something?
I think what I'm trying to get at is that if you're thinking about it's going to rain all day and you're going to feel wet and whatnot, most of the pain you're experiencing is the anticipation of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And not the actual, like, on the minute to minute what you're feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
Because actually, like, especially now when it's so hot, when it rains, it's really nice.
Yeah, but then if it has 2 inches forecast, you're like, oh no, am I wearing the proper clothing for this, you know?
You know, I've always enjoyed getting completely soaked in the rain.
Yeah.
But that was, like, I developed that tendency before I had to worry about, like, fragile electronics in my pocket.
Right.
Like, I just had that Nokia brick.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, yeah, I'll just jump in this pool and I'll be fine.
Right.
And now, with all this, I have like 5 things in my pocket that would break if it rained right now.
Well, yeah, right now is an exceptional
we all carry
situation.
around like $1,000 worth of electronics
but I love,
constantly.
if I don't have anything to worry about, I don't care if I'm getting wet. Because I can just, I'm like, you know, you just have to accept that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're like fully soaked. Because at some point you're like, oh, I actually can't get any more wet right now. So I can like just stop trying to stay dry.
Yeah, and also like exactly, I can just walk and everyone can go fuck themselves and I can walk home.
Exactly. And you're like but not using an umbrella.
Right, not using an umbrella. Look, I don't need things now.
Yeah.
Because and then
it's freeing.
Yeah, it is freeing. You do have to take care of yourself though once you get inside.
Oh yeah.
You gotta
hot shower right away.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that could lead to
you will get the sniffles.
Oh, you will. Yeah.
I felt sick yesterday, so I think that was part of it. And there's a lot of considerations with like how if our feet are wet and they're damp all day, there's blowback from that.
Blisters, that softens the feet and
the real takeaways for me were just that our understanding of meteorology, I mean, it's a joke, like, oh, the weatherman's never right, but it's like, no, they really are. They have very little idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're covering so much ground, it could rain more in one part than the other part. And like we only see the artifacts of that going through an area. And you think, we're all in the city, it all rains equally somehow, but it doesn't. It rains pretty significantly different, even in the distance that it takes to walk, not just like driving around or anything.
I was on a call with somebody the other day, and basically I was like, is it raining by you? What are you talking about? I'm like, well, I'm just watching all this rain. They go, oh shit, it's raining. And it's just kind of a weird, it's like, you're not that far away from me.
Right, they're like also in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember we were walking a few days ago and we got this app called Dark Sky.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know about that?
No.
Dude, it's so good. It's like the best weather app.
Uh-oh.
And I was looking at it and it shows you the rain down to like the millimeter in terms of from a top-down perspective.
Oh wow!
If that weather pattern's gonna like hit.
Oh.
And we were walking, and the map was like, it's gonna be like a block away from you. That's how close it's getting
Whoa.
to.
Wow.
And I kid you not, we could see like the
You could see the rain, but you couldn't feel the
Yeah,
rain?
no.
That's
I was
cool.
like,
That's
what?
cool.
That's very cool.
Like,
Sounds like we need that app.
dark sky.
Uh-oh.
Product placement.
This is it, yeah.
yeah, ooh, it's going
This
to be our
podcast
first
sponsored by
sponsor.
Dark Sky.
Can we
Not
talk
really.
about how this has been? So there's only so as far as natural disasters go, right? Like Sandy's number one because that just fucked us up. And it
Well,
fucked
in
us-
our time, and I think.
Well, I mean, the only other big one close to that was like that blizzard in the 70s that shut
Right.
down the highways.
Uh-huh.
But like Sandy is something that caused, I think, you can add this to the YouTube clip afterwards when I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I would say it's number one in terms of damage as far as
Yeah.
natural disasters.
Mm.
In New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like New Yorkers were always like, I don't think we realized how bad it was. Like we just couldn't fathom that something, because I think we were raised with like this urban legend, the buildings protect against the wind and they're tall buildings and don't worry about it.
Right.
And then like, oh, but like that water over there, that is a problem. And like we didn't realize that. But this trees getting ripped up the way that they did. So the only, in my memory, the only other time that we significantly had tree damage like this was one year. The trees still had leaves on them. It rained, then a cold snap happened. The rain froze to the leaves. So if they're already dead, it's less of a problem. But it just made the branches so heavy that branches were just falling.
Wow.
So that was one year. But seeing entire trees get ripped out of the ground is, I have never in my lifetime in New York City seen anything like that. And I'm talking like, I should have a picture, I'll show you guys later, but like, the sidewalk getting ripped out. Like, it was crazy. The whole paneling in Queens gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and we weren't ready for, I mean, I was living here at that point, and I was living in Gowanus.
Yeah.
So I was evacuated
Oh, jeez.
because we were really low.
Yeah.
And my apartment was actually fine, but I worked with a guy who was living in Coney Island.
Oh, done.
And he didn't evacuate.
Yeah.
And he ended up on the fifth, like, he was on the third floor of his building.
Right.
There were 5 floors.
Right.
And during the storm, the first floor went to the second floor, then first and second came to his floor,
Right.
then they went to the fourth, and
Right.
they ended up on the 5th floor.
Yeah, I believe
because
that.
the apartment flooded.
Yeah.
And luckily, it didn't flood more. Like, they had that 5th floor to go to. They could have gone to the roof, I guess, but
So
crazy that they didn't evacuate. But I think it's like kind of that, like, that mentality of like, oh, we're fine. Like,
Yeah.
we've never had to deal with this before. We boarded up the windows. We did what they said to do. What, you want us to do more than that? We're fine.
Yeah, I mean, the New Yorkers don't know how to handle natural disasters because we don't really face, like we sometimes we had like a few earthquakes, like very minor.
Yeah.
But it's all these like dudes come out the next morning on the corner and like, hey, did you feel it? That was crazy. All right,
Right.
see you later. Like, it's not like a big deal. Like, and then they like to tell the story of how they were in an earthquake. Like,
Right.
that's just like not, it's a fun thing, everything's fun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But then Sandy was kind of a different thing. For us, bringing it back to drinking in the park, so
And what these teens are doing.
and what
most likely.
probably what these
Yeah.
teens are doing right now.
So yeah, this is teens in nature, all right. But in the winter, the park is extra good to drink in because cops definitely don't want to drive in
oh,
there.
of course.
But when
Yeah.
Sandy happened, we were past the age where we could easily drink in bars. So there
Right,
was no
you were an
reason for this.
adult at that
But
point.
our inside child came out and we're like, hey, we could go down to the riverside.
Oh my gosh.
Because no one's down there right now and we can drink.
Oh my gosh.
And we were like 20 something
Yeah.
walking Riverside, and we walked the length of Riverside all the way down to Houston, and we got more and more drunk as we're walking, and we start to like, oh, there might be garnets in this stuff actually, but we start walking, and it's going from like, oh wow, that's crazy, to like, wait a minute, this is actually really bad.
Right.
And progressively worse the lower we got, and then by the time we got to like the 30s,
Yeah.
we decided to cross over into Manhattan
Oh my gosh.
from the West Side Highway, like cross over from Riverside, the Green Path, and all of a sudden the lights are out, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden all you smell is electricity,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden all you smell is like gas, and you're just like, wait, this is not like this is all dangerous.
Yeah, like this isn't fun anymore.
And cars don't have streetlights, and no one's directing traffic, so it's just pitch black, and nobody can see you on the street. And we got to like 14th or 12th Street and Houston. At this point, we're kind of like making jokes. We don't really realize what has happened, which is that people have died and damage has been done, and blah, blah. And we get to like this parking garage that has a bunch of people just trying to open the garage door, like just with chainsaw, like buzz saws, whatever. Oh, Lasker, nice. And what we didn't realize had happened was that it was a subterranean parking garage.
Yeah.
Like 6 floors, 5 floors down. And they thought, I don't think someone was, but they thought that someone was inside at
oh my gosh.
and just that was what that was what was really happening. And it went from, hey, cool, Upper West Side, you know, almost like a Hey Arnold world of like urban legend, like, you know, kind of just like fun, weird New York City to like, hey, this is reality down here.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But and so over here is actually where another one of the camp meet spots that my mom dropped me off and the counselors would pick us up. This is near the dairy farm, which is right over there. You can actually rent rods.
Oh, and go
Oh, no,
fishing?
sorry, this isn't the dairy farm. This is the, what's the name of the building? It's right over...
I don't know, is it the boathouse?
No, it's not the boathouse. They have another name for it, but you can rent rods and these bamboo ones, basically.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, no, those are their own. But you can rent rods, and they give you a little bit of bait,
yeah.
and you catch little sunfish. You can't eat them.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah.
I got cut by a sunfish once on my like hand right here.
Yeah, that's where they
I
get
don't have
you.
a scar anymore, but it left a scar for 11 or 12 years.
Well, it's
When I was a
impressive
little
that
kid
scar
until
tissue
I-
went away, because
I
usually after that
know.
point,
I know, I
you have to
kind of
give
wish
up.
it hadn't, because it was like a cool story, but
Yeah. Well, I know we've reached the end of the park. It's 110th Street, right up there.
An interesting thing about this part right here is it used to freeze over, and we used to dare each other how far we could get before falling in.
oh my gosh.
Nice.
Not very far, to be
No.
honest.
Well, that's probably
We don't
good.
live in Alaska. We
No.
live in New York City. It doesn't get really that frozen.
All right. So I think we'll stop for now.
Okay.
Thanks so much for joining us, Chris, and
Yeah.
regaling us with your New York City adventures.
Yeah, welcome to New York City, everyone.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Jesse, do you have anything you want to say?
Bye.
Bye is it. All right, we'll
Bye.
catch you next week
Thanks for watching.
with your wife.
I'm gonna come to that one too.
Oh, you got to make sure she doesn't
Ooh.
contradict anything you said. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Till next time. Bye.